In the 1990s, 8 people locked themselves inside a massive, sealed glass ecosystem for 2 years, and almost immediately, the experiment went wildly wrong. The project was born out of the 1980s counterculture and a desire to test Buckminster Fuller's concept of spaceship Earth. The vision was highly ambitious: build a completely self-sustaining prototype that could one day keep a human colony alive on the surface of Mars. It cost over $150 million to construct the 3.14-acre facility in the Arizona desert. The structure housed an agricultural zone alongside 5 distinct wilderness biomes: a tropical rainforest, a Caribbean ocean, mangrove wetlands, a savanna, and a fog desert. This diagram shows a critical engineering workaround. Extreme temperature swings in the desert cause air to rapidly expand and contract. To prevent this from shattering the airtight glass, engineers built massive, expandable underground chambers called lungs that neutralized the pressure. Inside, designers utilized a strategy called species packing, introducing over 3,000 distinct plants and animals into the habitat. They assumed ecological self-organization would eventually stabilize the food webs. On September 26, 1991, the heavy airlock doors were sealed. The team believed they could mathematically model, construct, and manually operate millions of years of planetary evolution inside a bubble. That bold belief was tested within weeks. The 8 crew members entered the dome expecting to operate as scientific observers and managers. Instead, they quickly realized the automated systems could not sustain them, and they were forced into grueling, exhausting manual labor just to survive. Because chemical pesticides and modern fertilizers were strictly banned to prevent toxic buildup in the recycled air and water, filing was entirely manual. The crew spent 25% of their waking hours planting, weeding, and harvesting food by hand. Then, the weather outside refused to cooperate. An unexpected El Niño weather pattern brought the heaviest winter cloud cover the Arizona desert had seen in years. Without consistent, direct sunlight penetrating the glass panes, plant photosynthesis stalled and crop yields collapsed. The biospherians were continually hungry, eventually losing between 15 and 18% of their total body weight. Paradoxically, the facility's medical data showed that their cholesterol and blood pressure plummeted, proving that human bodies adapt efficiently to a nutrient-dense, calorie-restricted diet. But the crew's physical adaptation couldn't save the farm. A perfectly planned mathematical model for agricultural output will always collapse when confronted with the unpredictable reality of Earth's weather systems. While the crew starved, a far more dangerous threat emerged. The atmospheric oxygen levels inside the dome plummeted from a normal 21% down to 14.2%. The crew was suddenly trying to farm while breathing air equivalent to a 17,000-foot mountain peak. This flowchart illustrates exactly where the intended atmospheric loop broke down. To ensure lush plant growth, the designers had heavily loaded the biome soils with rich organic compost. Once the dome was sealed, soil microbes underwent a massive respiration boom, rapidly consuming the available oxygen and expelling massive volumes of carbon dioxide. But here, the data stopped making sense. For every molecule of oxygen the microbes consumed, a proportional amount of carbon dioxide should have appeared in the air. Instead, thousands of pounds of carbon dioxide simply vanished. A geochemist named Wallace Broecker finally solved the mystery. The missing carbon dioxide was actively reacting with the calcium hydroxide in the facility's unsealed concrete walls. This process, known as concrete carbonation, chemically trapped the carbon and starved the plants of the CO2 they needed to photosynthesize and replenish the oxygen. The physiological toll became too dangerous to ignore. Mission directors were forced to inject 31,000 pounds of liquid oxygen into the dome to keep the crew alive, officially breaking the strict closed-loop rule the experiment was founded upon. In a closed ecosystem, there is no such thing as a neutral background. Even passive construction materials, like concrete, act as highly disruptive participants in atmospheric chemistry. The atmospheric breakdown triggered a cascade of ecological imbalances across the biomes. Essential pollinating insects like honeybees and hummingbirds died off completely, while populations of household cockroaches and invasive crazy ants exploded into the millions. The psychological strain of starvation, oxygen deprivation, and constant physical labor took its toll on the isolated crew. The 8 biospherians eventually fractured into 2 deeply hostile factions, actively ignoring each other or engaging in bitter arguments over how the science should proceed. Outside the glass, the media scrutiny was intense. Reporters mocked the project's struggles, the secret oxygen injections, and the corporate secrecy, publicly labeling the $150 million scientific facility an eco-Disneyland. The financial and public relations crises led to a corporate takeover in 1994, spearheaded by investment banker Steve Bannon. The transition was so hostile that original crew members actively mutinied, breaking the facility's glass seals from the outside in an attempt to protect the safety of the second mission's crew. The closed-door experiments were terminated prematurely. Corporate politics, media pressure, and psychological stress ultimately proved that the human element was the most volatile and unmanageable variable in the entire system. Following the mutiny, the facility pivoted entirely. In 1996, Columbia University assumed management, abandoning the idea of a sealed human space colony. Instead, they transformed Biosphere 2 into an open-system mesocosm, a massive land-based research vessel designed for macro-scale Earth science. Looking at this massive indoor ocean biome, researchers from Columbia were able to physically manipulate the temperature and chemistry of the water. They used this controlled environment to definitively prove that elevated carbon dioxide severely reduces calcification rates, directly slowing the growth of coral reefs. Now managed by the University of Arizona, the site hosts projects like the Landscape Evolution Observatory and a program that attaches living coral fragments to arcs to track their survival in warming waters. The facility provided a physical map of how biogeochemical cycles fluctuate in small environments and exposed the chemical impact that building materials like concrete have on the air we breathe. These results suggest that sustaining life in a closed loop depends on our capacity to monitor, adapt, and respond to the behavior of a complex system in real time.